Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Manjeet Singh from University School of Applied Management, Punjabi University, Patiala. Today, we are going to discuss about a module, Recent Trends in the Global Business Environment, under the paper Business Environment. Now, after reading this lesson, you should be able to understand the various factors affecting global business environment. Secondly, you should be able to comprehend the recent trends in the global business environment. And lastly, you should be in a position to understand the various driving forces behind this global business environment. Thanks to the economic and political reforms, the domestic business environment has changed substantially as a response to the international events. The term business environment generally relates to the different factors which have an impact on the conduct of businesses. These factors can be further categorized into internal and external, considering the international exposures of the same. Out of all the economic reforms, globalization is one of such economic reform that has changed the attitude of worldwide economies towards India. Let me share with you my own experience that after we adopted this process of globalization, liberalization, and privatization, and the way we started developing, the whole of world was looking at us, and they often used to say that India has become very interesting country to watch these days. So the future of world economy these days is dependent upon the developments in India. So in simple terms, all the worldwide economies are coming as a single large market platform, whereby the business houses are attempting to analyze not only their respective economic events but the global factors as well. If we go by the dictionary meaning of the term environment, it refers to the surroundings or conditions in which a person, animal, or plant lives or operates for survival in an often hostile environment. The same can also be said about a business environment. Internal factors are the elements within the organization like the employees, culture, management, supply chain, etc. Whereas the external factors embody the different political, economic, and social factors that channelize the overall way of doing businesses. So, global business environment comprises of the different political, social, economic, cultural, and financial factors at the international level that are exogenous to the organization but impacting the business environment. For instance, under the flagship endeavors of World Bank and International Monetary Fund, that is IMF, different bilateral and multilateral agreements have been entered between the countries. And these agreements directly have an impact on the way of doing business with other connected international economies. On a similar note, the global financial crisis that got triggered in US financial system in 2008 had an impact on other international economies as well. The impact was not just limited to the financial system, but the overall trade relations at the global level got affected with the problem which was created in the US financial system. So, an understanding of the overall global business environment is utmost essential these days. Moreover, the changing international market structures and integrations are adding up to the global business environment understanding. Factors affecting global business environment. The first factor which influence the global business environment is the factors related to society. We also call it social factors. These factors include behavior, tastes, socio-cultural, lifestyles patterns of a population. Demographics play an important role in determining the buying patterns of population. Age, gender, profession, etc. have an impact on the overall buying behavior of the individuals. And understanding of such changes is critical for developing the corporate strategies. In a globalized environment, the social factors vary from one country to another. For example, global chain of quick service restaurants, namely McDonald's, introduce products considering not only the tastes and preferences of the domestic consumers, but the religious sentiments are also considered at the time of designing menu strategies. Let me share with you one more example here. McDonald's has recently opened its one of the outlet near Golden Temple, Amritsar. This particular outlet is offering all vegetarian menu in its outlet. Now, this is the first outlet of McDonald's which is offering all vegetarian menu, which is unique in the world. So, you just see how this McDonald's has changed its strategy to attract the customer, which is one of the, Golden Temple is one of the most famous place in the world, and more than 100,000 people, they visit Golden Temple. So catching that particular large clientele, they have come up with a menu which can give them quick returns. The second factor which affect the global business environment is the legal factors. These factors involve changes in the government laws and regulations. An understanding of these legal regulations is utmost essential because of the increasing trade as well as the financial linkages among the international economies. Laws and concerning rules and regulations are changing over a period of time. To quote, laws related to consumer health and consumerism are particularly different across nations. So, for the successful functioning of business houses, international trade laws and regulations play a very important role, and the business needs to understand them while designing the strategy related to that particular economy. The political factors. These factors refer to the political ideologies comprising changes in the government policies. These factors have an impact on overall operations of the business. For example, rules relating to FDI, that is foreign direct investment, and the foreign financial flows are changing over the years. These changing patterns are particularly relevant for the emerging markets like India. On a similar note, fiscal policy initiatives undertaken in the emerging economies are particularly increasing the competing elements among the said markets. The international business houses are required to comprehend these political ideologies time and again. Another important factor which influences the global business environment is the economic factors. These factors involve the changes in the overall economic structures. Inflationary pressures are the core economic factors driving the international business strategies. Increasing living standards imply increasing inflationary pressures due to the increase in the demand for the products. Consequently, increase in the demand for the products causes business houses to witness profits. So, an understanding of overall economic conditions is essential for the successful operations of the business. Other economic factors that affect the business includes changes in the real interest rate, wage rates, unemployment levels, consumer confidence levels, production levels, etc. Technological factors. New innovations and inventions always have an impact on the overall business operations because the said factors reduce the cost and develop new products as well. With the advent of modern information and communication technologies, relevant information can be transferred from one country to another in just few seconds. This further helps in gaining competitive advantage. For example, international brokerage houses are heavily reliant on modern technologies for buy and sell related strategies with respect to the worldwide markets across different nations. Recent trends in the global business environment. The first important trend which is noticeable is with regard to the global banking structure. Domestic banking institutions are slowly increasing their exposure to international assets and liabilities. To quote, the US financial crisis had an impact on other international economies as well, just because of the exposure to the latter economies in structurally created international mortgage assets. With the advent of modern technology, domestic banking institutions are converting into global banking institutions. These increasing international exposures are substantially driving the global business strategies. The second major trend in the global business environment is related to the sustainable and clean energy. Climate change agreements are talk of the town these days. The emerged markets like the US, UK, European Union, Japan, etc. are entering into agreements in taking emerging markets to the path of sustainability and usage of clean energy. The countries are deriving ways in procuring clean energy from the international shores. Consequently, these agreements are seriously impacting the way the businesses are conducted in the domestic as well as international markets. We have seen these days that most of the products in electricals and electronic segments, they come up with the energy efficiency tags. So, this particular factor is influencing the designing of new products in these types of industries. The third factor which is influencing, the third trend which is emerging these days is the increasing economic power of the emerging markets. The contribution of the emerging markets in the overall global factors is increasing over the years. A new acronym called BRICS, which comprises of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is gaining importance since the last 1 decade. These emerging economies are expected to outperform other emerged markets in the coming future because of the existence of diverse opportunities in the wake of middle class strata of the society in these countries, the technological revolutions which are taking place in these countries, the infrastructure advancements which are taking place, the rising education level, and the socio-cultural factors, all these are influencing these economies. So, because of these opportunistic factors, emerging markets are considered to be an important import and export destinations for the international players, thereby driving global business strategies. Another trend which is influencing the global business environment is the increasing privatization. Slowly, the international economies are moving towards privatizing corporate affairs. Public private partnerships and divestment programs are the core parts of these strategies undertaken in the worldwide markets. The role of government in channelizing funds is slowly reducing. Capitalize, sorry, that is, capitalism is state-of-art philosophy which international economies are also following. Obviously, these changing patterns have an impact on the international business environment as well. Another factor is the technological revolution. With the advent of information and communication technology, new business opportunities are emerging. Cloud computing is a new way of handling business operations worldwide. Mobile phones, broadband connections are changing the ways of doing business by promoting virtual teams. Moreover, the role of government in enhancing the use of technology is quite commendable. For instance, the concept of smart city under the new government clearly reflects the importance that is being placed on the technological revolution that the government attempts to introduce. For this, the government is also considering the international financial flows. Another key trend in the global business environment is the changing demographic features. Because of globalization, consumer tastes and preferences are changing over the years. More and more women candidates are getting employment in the industrial and the financial houses. Growing e-commerce platforms are helping consumers and prospective buyers in buying and even selling through these online platforms both at the national level as well as at the international level. The said platforms are creating new employment avenues for the people. For instance, Japanese economies is witnessing aging population. However, it is finding respite in selling its product to the worldwide consumers. Another recent trend in the global business environment is the international arbitration. These days, international arbitrators are playing an important role in directing the global business strategies. The disputes which are outside the purview of domestic rules and regulations are referred to the international arbitrators. The existence of these agencies is not only resolving the said disputes but also promoting and enhancing the confidence among the business fraternities for entering into international trade relationships. Another recent trend is the competitive advantage. In today's scenario, most of the emerged markets are witnessing slower growth rates. So, this situation is placing an important role that the emerging markets can play in deriving the international growth rates. Increasing trade relations with the emerging markets vividly highlight the growing importance and the competitive advantage of the said economies. For example, if we take the case of India, the huge population of India is giving huge opportunities to the economies and the companies worldwide for deriving their growth. So, that is giving a competitive advantage. Another recent trend in the global business environment is the regional and economic blocs. The various regional and economic blocs like European Union, ASEAN, etc. are slowly increasing cooperation amongst the international economies. The said economies are opening up their respective domestic economies for the international investors. Consequently, these regional and economic blocs have an impact on the global business environment. The driving forces in the global business environment. The first driving force is the integration of international economies. Globalization has led to the integration of domestic economies with the international ones. The countries are undertaking several trade-related measures and developmental policies so as to increase cross-border trade relations. These increasing economic ties are adding to the global business environment. Another driving force is liberalization. For an effective implementation of globalized practices, freedom of trade, goods, services, technology, capital, and labor across the international borders act as a precursor. Concerning this, several business entities are required to undertake business ventures considering the liberalized policies of the international economies. Another driving force is the free trade. This feature of globalization, which provides free trade between the countries, is also an important driving force. The term free trade doesn't mean trade between the countries without paying any custom duty or other levies. It simply means reduction in the government procedures and duties so that the international trade conventions can be conducted without excessive procedures. Another driver behind this global business environment is transfer of technology. On the whole, globalization has led to the transfer of technology from the developed nations to the developing nations. The developed countries like US are having more advanced technology and rich technology which can further be transferred to the developing economies like India in wake of the optimum exploitation and the development of the latter economies. These technological revolutions are helping in deriving the global business environment. Another is international financial flows. Globalization involves movement of financial flows from one country to another. Increasing international capital flows and the global banking transactions are promoting international cooperation between the domestic and the global business strategies. Another factor is transnational companies. Because of globalization, a new concept of transnational companies has come into existence, apart from the multinational companies. The transnational companies treat entire world market as one single market, promoting a decentralized decision-making system across international boundaries. In other words, the transnational companies do not make changes in their respective products at the time of entering the foreign markets, like Coca-Cola. The product is same across diverse boundaries. Now, let me share with you a very interesting international experience with regard to this particular topic. The topic which relates to that if we don't understand the global business environment, the business cannot survive. There is a very interesting case study related to the Chinese toy industry. Now, what happened in 2007? The Consumer Product Safety Commission in US recalled more than 500,000 toys made in China as they contain dangerous levels of lead. A lot of what is being recalled is because it violates the law, not that there is any imminent health risk. That is what the Commission observed. Now, this October 2007 recall was a latest in the series of Chinese toys recalls by the toy companies and the retailers in the developed countries. Now, the reasons which were given for these recalls were the excessive levels of the lead paint, loose magnets that could be swallowed by the children, or other potentially serious problems. Toys have had a prime place in the Chinese society since the ancient times. Folk toys made of wood, clay, paper have always been very popular with the Chinese children. Masks and clay figure in the shapes of animals that have been found in the ruins of ancient Chinese habitations. The history of modern Chinese toys, however, dates back to the early 90s. Around 1910, the first factory that made toy from the tin was set up. Toy making in China started gaining momentum after the fourth movement in 1919. Chinese toy company, like other companies in the manufacturing sector, benefited from the reforms initiated in China in 1979. With the opening up of Chinese economy, toy makers from Hong Kong, which by then had become a major global center for good quality toys, started setting up production facilities in mainland China in order to take advantage of the lower operational costs. However, most of the value added work, such as product design, production planning, quality control, management, and marketing, continued to be done from Hong Kong. Though the Chinese toy industry had several strengths, it was also up against several problems that had the potential to significantly affect the future growth. To start with, Chinese toy companies were faced with the dual pressures of rising costs and declining prices. The recalls had a limited impact on the toy sales in US and European Union, but they severely dented the Chinese toy industry's image in the international markets. The possible long-term impact on its reputation, however, was only one of the many issues which was confronting the toy industry in China. With cost of raw materials and labor increasing, the toy companies were seeing erosion in their margins. Also, the growing popularity of high-tech electronic toys was a challenge to the Chinese toy manufacturing companies, as they were not very strong in that field. Furthermore, even in the traditional toy markets, the countries like Vietnam and Thailand, they were beginning to pose a big threat to the Chinese toys. In an attempt to improve the quality of toys, the Chinese government sponsored two-day training session in 2007 on quality control for more than 1,000 people from the Chinese toy industry. At these sessions, Chinese government officials and executives from multinational companies lectured on the European and US quality and safety standards. China's toy licensing system, toy certificate system, export test regulations, etc. The participants were taught how to deal with the high lead levels or design flaws in their products. The history of modern Chinese toy industry dates back to the early 1900s. By the early 1980s, the Chinese toy industry was developed enough to compete in the international market. By 2006, benefiting from the economies of the scale and the cheap labor, the Chinese toy industry had come to dominate the global market for toys, accounting for around 75% of the world's output. However, in 2006-7, the Chinese toy industry faced a series of product recalls, adversely affecting its global image. The case discusses the development of Chinese toy industry over the years. It discusses the problems facing the toy industry in China with a specific emphasis on the issue of recalls in 2007 and the reason behind the recalls. It examines some of the other challenges that the Chinese toy industry faces, such as increasing labor costs, technological inferiority of the Chinese toys, and the growing demand for high tech toys, and the Chinese toys manufacturers' lack of brand power. The case ends with a discussion on the actions taken in response to the series of recalls and possible impact of these recalls on the Chinese toy industry. So, dear students, let us summarize what we have learned in this module. Firstly, the term business environment generally relates to different factors having an impact on the conduct of businesses. These factors can be further categorized into internal and external, considering the international exposures of the same. Secondly, out of all the economic reforms, globalization is one of such economic reform that have changed the attitude of worldwide economies toward India. Now, the events are not only for the Indian economy, other international economies are also witnessing increasing trade as well as financial linkages with each other. Thirdly, all the worldwide economies are coming up as a single market platform, whereby the business houses are attempting to analyze not only their respective domestic economic events, but the global factors as well. Internal factors are the elements within the organization like employees, culture, supply chain, etc. Whereas, on the other hand, external factors embody different political, economic, and social factors that channelize the overall way of doing the business. So, the global business environment comprises of different global, political, social, economical, cultural, and financial factors that are exogenous to an organization, but having an impact on the domestic business environment. Global banking structure, sustainable and clean energy, increasing economic power of the emerging markets, increasing privatization, technological revolution, changing demographic features, international arbitration, competitive advantage, and the regional economic blocs are some of the recent trends in the global business environment. Thank you.